what is up? We are back with season 2 of the podcast, Spiritual Roundtable, with myself, Child of Balance, and Miss Keys of Wisdom 369. And it's about to get turned up a couple notches this season. Buckle up. We're back to what we do best: devil's advocate, expansive thinking, highlighting triggers and laughter, and so much more. Join us as we embark on a journey of unlocking spiritual potential. As always, we promise to give you what you need and only sometimes what you want. Let's get going, B.
Hey, everybody. So today, we want to talk about what I feel like has become this obvious tipping point where people have kind of like hijacked spirituality, because the spiritual journey is getting to know yourself. It's literally a process of confronting the mirror and not avoiding, but somehow we ended up where people think love and light is something to be earned, where people pretend they're awakened but only align with the versions that pat their ego, where they have avoided so many things in their life and their experience that they thought they could trade that for purpose in the spiritual journey. And I just feel like there's this tipping point, this unmasking point now in the energy, where you can't hide behind a spiritual aesthetic. And you know what I'm talking about. You don't need crystals. You don't need all the things behind you. That's not spirituality. That's materialism. People keep trading like greed and money for their purpose. And it seems like all of those things are reaching this climax point from where I sit, that it can't hold itself anymore. And people are avoiding the idea that your shadows lead you to your gifts, but they're bypassing the whole thing under the guise of being spiritual. And so today, what I want to touch on and talk about is, what are you still avoiding while claiming you're on your spiritual journey?
I feel like before you even get into that, I feel like I just want to reiterate something that you said in like the 2 seconds that you've been talking so far. And it's literally that whole, like, you know what I mean? Like when you just hear something and you're like, oh, I want to say that again for the people in the back. Like that idea that it's not the crystals that make you spiritual. It's not the wardrobe. It's not the getup. It's not even the thing that you probably think it is. That is what you deem spirituality. It's not unleashing the new earth. It's not, busting open your past lives. It's not, working with your abilities. It's not any of the things that you probably loop into the circle that is that broad spectrum that people call spiritual or spirituality. When you think about it, anything can be spiritual if you're doing spirituality correctly. And when I say correctly, I mean all inclusively, correct through connection and not through anything. Like I can go get the mail spiritually. And I don't think people understand that, or they don't take enough time to really let that sink in that it's the mundane things that you can do spiritually in full connection with full awareness, in the present moment, like mindfully, even like you can do all of these things. And I feel like sometimes the idea of spirituality as a whole kind of almost falls into a religion when it's
Yes.
actually kind of not. And I understand that you can have spiritual practices, spiritual habits, rituals, spiritual belief system. Great. But it actually isn't like a hard and fast religion. But I do
Oh,
think it's interesting, like how many people throw it on as an add-on. I know so many people who are
yeah.
like, I'm a Christian spiritualist. I'm spiritual, but I'm Buddhist. I'm, Jewish, but I'm kind of spiritual. Well, yeah, because it's not its own like sector. Like it's like that little sidekick, but I can breathe spiritually. I can wash my teeth. I was gonna say wash my hair and brush my teeth, like, but we can wash my teeth. Like, no, but you can take a shower spiritually, and I just think it's so interesting. That point where you're like, well, all that other things is like material items and more more for the ego or the system that we've built around our own individual idea held on spirituality than actually spirituality within itself. And I love the example, and we're getting a little off topic, but I don't care, we're gonna do it. Like, I love the example. I think it was like Witchfoot, if I'm being 100% honest, before her passing, like rest in peace, on
Yeah.
Talk a couple years ago.
So much
I was
wisdom.
not a big Witchfoot follower. So like, but I did appreciate a lot of her brutally honest videos on Talk that when they would come up on my FYP. So a couple years ago, she was just like, you guys are all missing it, you guys pick up these crystals and you think because you have turquoise, it does all these things for you. And she's like, you could go out in your backyard and pick up a random pebble and charge it with intention, like they used to do back in the day. They didn't have access to every single gemstone on the planet in their backyard. And this is what this was good for. And it changed your perspective. Like, who told you this shit? Who told you that, drawing a circle 3 times meant this? Who told you that grabbing this crystal and putting it in your pocket did this for you? Who made those rules? And how did we judge those things? Did we measure them? Are they scientifically backed? Are they folklore backed? Are they traditionally backed? Like, what is it? Is it coming off of different religions? And I think when you kind of take it from that idea, I wonder how many things of a spiritual nature are actually borrowed. You know what I mean? They're borrowed from religions. They're borrowed from ancient practices. They're borrowed from all these other beginnings, and then they're kind of bastardized a little bit. They're kind of bastardized because without the
But they are. That's what I
foundation,
want to say
without
to
the foundations of where they started, they begin to go a little off kilter. They begin to get a
But
little
like,
much. And then you start delving into that realm, like you're talking about, of almost idolization of a thing or that's like you almost make the tool bigger than just a tool. You make it the center of like where that energy comes from, where that healing comes from, where that self discovery comes from. And no, you didn't heal yourself because you had a crystal in your pocket. They're tools. They can, you know, lend to something, they can take away, they can amplify, they can minimize, they can help, funnel or focus or, but it's not the end all be all. And I think that's really important when you start talking about spiritual bypassing is the whole idea of spirituality needs to be changed in your mind for this episode to make sense. Because
yes.
so much of what's taught in mainstream um functionality, maybe structures of a lot of modern spiritual concepts, and that's the way I'm going to say it, concepts, um, can really get you far away from the actual definition of spiritual or spirituality. And they push you into a definite, defined structure, system, pattern, of a hard and fast thing with a whole lot of limits, whole lot of labels, whole lot of boxes. And you can really get um sideways. You can really get sideways in focusing on it's like that old adage. What is it? It's like, oh, if I convince you to look at my left hand, you'll never know what my right hand's doing. And it's like that kind of a thing where sometimes they have you focusing on one thing, like you said, the toxic love and light, and you mentioned that. They'll have you focusing on all the positive vibes, all the high energy stuff, maybe it's goals or markers or you need to ascend. How many times have we heard that? You need to ascend and this and that, and you're missing the whole
Let's
other
just start
half.
with the bastardization. Let's just start with the bastardization of things. Manifestation. I'm gonna start there. Manifestation. Everybody needs to sit down with that. Stop. Everybody thinks manifestation is this action and this thing that you need to do to achieve and this and that. Manifest means to make clear or obvious. That is the etymology of the word manifest, to make clear or obvious. So when we talk about awakening or remembering, what are we doing? We are deconstructing the illusion, the fog, the confusion, so that it's clear again, so that things become obvious and clear and clarity. That is manifest. Manifest is to make clear and obvious. In no way, shape, or form does to make clear or obvious assign the meaning of abundance, love, union, this or that.
Well,
That is
when
an
are you not
individual personal
manifesting?
need.
Am I like I get exhausted
But
sometimes
that's it. That's not
by
even what
that.
it means, though.
It's like, but
It's a
when
bastardized name.
it's like, but when are you not
People need to know what
manifesting?
it means.
When are you not in line with everything that your energy is doing?
But that's the thing. You're expressing energy always. You are always an expression of energy. Whether you like that, whether you like what that reflection looks like, whether you prefer it or don't, you are always expressing energy. You are a human. Light become clear. Light manifested. Light becoming clear and obvious, right? So your light, your being, your soul, your whatever you want to call it, manifesting, becoming clear and obvious so you can perceive it with the eyes on your face. Because that's what the eyes on your face are for, is perceiving.
No,
If you don't like what you can see,
I think it's one of those things where, people go, well, that's not how I was taught to manifest. And it's like, I understand that. I understand that that's not how you were taught, but you were probably taught tools or techniques to help you focus your natural energetic making clear of energy onto one goal, one topic, one thing. So they maybe told you to visualize. Maybe they told you to journal. Maybe they told you to show a ton of gratitude for it already being here. They tried to show you all these other kinds of ways, affirmations, right? You're just putting mindful focus on one part of that ability that you have innately to manifest, to make clear through energy. You know what I mean? But I feel like sometimes it gets taken as like this new wave thing. If I do these 4
but that's because
steps.
it goes back to avoidance, right? Because what are people avoiding? They're avoiding the feeling of unworthiness, that they are unworthy of what they want. So they need a process, they need a teaching, they need boxes to mark, they need a permission slip. So that if they can do these things, mark these boxes, check these things off, now they're worthy of what they say they want. Now they've done the things to achieve what already exists. But that's that undercurrent, that's that undertone, that's that bypassing, because we're avoiding being worthy of what it is we want to receive. That's what we're bypassing. We are bypassing our unworthiness, and we're dressing it up as, if I do enough shadow work, if I heal enough, if I buy this and get this and do this ritual or this process, then I'll be worthy to receive these things finally. Only for what to happen? Most people are like, I hear this all the time, I'm still waiting on my abundance. You're always abundant. Do you like what you're abundant in? That's for you to decide. What are you abundant in? See, people take abundance and then they skew it again. They teach people that abundance is material things. It's your money, it's your house, it's your dream job, it's your vacation. Those are all material things that keep you attached to the very thing that people are telling you they're trying to teach you how to shift out of. So what are you aligning with becomes the question. That's the whole, I mean, honestly, that's the whole purpose. I just want to like make people's,
Oh, but
minds
that's
knowing to kind of step forward and go, whoa. Because people come into spirituality and they're all like, I'm not religious. Great, super, put a pin in that. But then you're greed, vanity, all of these things, right? So you're aligning with what kind of energy? What somebody in religion called sin, right? You're manifesting, you're making these things clear because it's who you need to be. This is what spirituality looks like. What? You need to have all these things and this backdrop and this and like earlier, these crystals and this kind of clothing. That's an aesthetic. That's a mask. You're dressing yourself up to be received as spiritual. When the thing is, you can't teach. And when I say this, don't give yourself the label of teacher, because you're not responsible, again, for how people receive you or what they integrate from an experience with you. You can sit there and try and teach somebody something all day long. It doesn't mean it's going to stick. land or they're going to integrate. They can hear you in that moment and be like, oh my gosh, revelation, right? Like, oh my God, the dots connect. And then they can still choose to freeze and do nothing with it. It's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of them and where they're at. But that's the thing. You can only teach from experience. And that's it. Everybody wants their experience. And truthfully, when they shift over into this, because I think a lot of us can relate to this, you want your suffering to mean something. You want all those hardships and those obstacles and those battles and all of this shit that you went through to mean something. So then you latch on, because what are you actually avoiding? Again, it all goes back to avoidance over and over and over again, because avoidance has become our subconscious program. It's what's safe, it's what's secure, and avoidance leads to bypass.
What do you think is the number one bypassing you see in spiritual bypassing?
Savior complex. I do. I think it's savior complex. And the reason I say that is because if people would pause long enough, who first of all, I want you to disrupt it like this. Who do you know around you that has asked you to save them? Because the chances most people will say, and I mean in this spiritual sense, who asked you to save them? No, what's happening is there's this part of your energy, right, that wishes somebody would have saved you in moments that you felt abandoned and that you felt alone. So now we're in this spiritual energy, right? We're in this, I'm the savior of humanity. I'm the martyr. I have to fight. I have to break the curses. I have to do all of that. It's all rooted in what? That abandonment, that people not showing up for you or you not showing up for yourself. So now we're going to put on we're here to save people. We're here to heal people. Healing is a lens. It is a perspective. It is not one place. It's not a finish line. It's a lens. And it's a lens that, like, think of like when you go to the eye doctor and they change those lenses real fast. And which one can you see clearly out of? It's different for everybody. That's when it becomes clear. It's different for everybody because your experiences may be similar, but they're not the same. And that's what makes your wisdom yours. But it also makes it to what people can resonate from. But until you realize that your wisdoms come from all those experiences, and that's what you're actually avoiding when you're still resonating with shame and guilt and judgment and superiority and that inflated ego, martyr, savior complex, you're still resonating in that abandonment because you think you need to save somebody else because you're showing up for a version of yourself that you feel like didn't get saved. But who asked you to save anybody else? Who asked you to go to war for other people?
And I feel like sometimes this topic is hard for maybe the not so extreme of the people who are going through some sort of spiritual journey. And I just want to remind people that it can be really subtle too. It doesn't have to be a large savior complex and you believe you're here to save the world. It can be super subtle, like something as subtle as relying overtly like on an outside source, like a spiritual teacher, or even deep diving through spiritual texts and avoiding your own inner voice. Like when you have to constantly seek validation from either social media or you have to buy a read from somebody like every other day or every day or, 2 or 3 times a week because you require the voice of somebody else because you're avoiding your own. It could be really subtle. And a lot of times I find people who fall into the more subtle aspects of it, you know.
Yes.
Now there's always going to be the people who, unfortunately are in the extremes where we're taking on savior complex, or stuff like that. But sometimes it's really simple. Like how many times you heard people like, I just don't have time for that negativity in my life. Positive vibes only. That's not good. That's an extreme within itself if we're only allowing one side of the scale to ever be experienced. That they're saying that they can't handle anything that doesn't shine through with toxic positivity, because that's really what it is. Toxic
Correct.
positivity. I'm going to close my eyes to all my problems, all my issues, all my arguments, all my disagreements, and I don't have time for it. So I'm going to avoid it because it causes me to feel some sort of way. It either brings me down, it pisses me off, it makes me feel unheard, unseen, people just don't understand me, I'm feeling like the black sheep again. It's bringing me down, so I can't handle it, so therefore I must run from it. That's also avoidance, and
Yep.
and sometimes it's even subtler than that. Sometimes it's not, I'm casting out everything that, causes me, to feel something. Sometimes it's also the opposite of, like, I need to escape into meditation, or I need to dive so much into these esoteric spiritual practices, or rituals or rites, in order to avoid my reality, because my reality is triggering. There's still the
Yeah.
avoidance in there. It doesn't matter what it is
Well,
you're avoiding, you're still avoiding
but I
something.
also think even just with that, you're avoiding the fact that you're the one labeling this stuff. You are labeling someone else positive, toxic, negative, this and that. Now I challenge you. You recognize that energy. Why do you recognize it? Why do you recognize it? Why is that the label you're giving it? And the thing is this, things that people deem as negative or toxic from their own lens doesn't necessarily mean that the person that they've labeled is doing so intentional. That's like mind boggling to me sometimes. Some people lack self awareness. We've all lacked self awareness at some point in time. And if you can't be honest enough with yourself to admit that, then that's just wild. But we've all lacked a self awareness at some point in time. And if people don't have that awareness, you labeling them that way is actually a judgment. And what part of you are you avoiding and still judging? Because there had to be a common denominator there at one point in time.
Well, but that's the thing, and it comes down to anything that you feel like you can't look at, discuss, you're exhausted by, it hurts too much to go. I can't tell you how many people tell me that, oh, it hurts too much to go back there, hurts too much to deal with this. You are actively in avoidance, and it doesn't matter what it's about. The idea that you can feel so strongly about something, and it makes you either, I call it, flip your humanity switch, go numb about it, or we're actively heading in the opposite direction of anything or any trigger that may bring that issue up. It's an avoidance problem.
Yes.
And I feel like, it's a little twofold. Like, your nervous system will always try to avoid things that it knows has a pattern of causing you pain or hurt in that way. However, doesn't mean that's right. It usually means you're functioning in some sort of survival mode. If your nervous system in your brain is telling you, and it's shutting off certain receptors or parts of your feelers, or in order to safeguard you, chances are you're
Hmm.
still in fight or flight, and your body's running in survival mode. So when it comes to
Correct.
your healing, you don't heal in
But
survival mode.
that's what most people bypass and they don't realize it. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. People bypass their nervous system. Your nervous system is your gateway. And until you realize that your nervous system is the gateway, if you sit here and you go, I'm spiritual, great. I'm on my spiritual journey. That's how I'm going to say that. But I want you to look at that. If you are sitting there, I want to know if you're in fight or flight. Are you the warrior? Are you the fighter? Are you always fighting off attacks and this and that? I'm going to tell you, your nervous system doesn't recognize what you're telling it versus what's actually happening. If you're reliving past traumas through a quote unquote spiritual lens, your nervous system is still doing the same thing. It doesn't care what you're trying to convince it that you're doing. And see, this is where the avoidance comes in. We're avoiding our nervous system every single time. And then we're bypassing it by trying to give it meaning through something else. Because where is everything stored at? In your nervous system. That's why we tell people it will seek out the same experiences, whether you prefer them or not. It doesn't matter if you're, I left religion, I left politics, I'm in spirituality now, I'm in this and this and this. If your nervous system is still in the same state that it was, you're going to have the same experiences regardless of the label or the construct or the cage or whatever that you place yourself in. Because your nervous system's running the show. But it's also your gateway. Because what lies behind it, that's your knowing.
And it just keeps bringing me back to that, like, saying that's like you're not um you're not conserving your peace, you're avoiding your triggers. And if you feel the need to avoid your triggers, you're not healed and you're not healing.
Nope.
And I really want people to understand that. The things that trigger you, the things that irk you, the things that get you fired up, that have your emotions flowing in a rapid way, that sometimes may be hard to control or get a grasp of or cool down from, those are the things that you actually need to spend more time around, not
Yes.
avoid. And I feel like that's the number one thing that I notice people do in I don't wanna say wrongly, but improperly, especially when it comes to dealing with anxiety, is that we cater to the anxiety, but actually the only way to break the anxiety is to do the thing you have anxiety over, to face it,
Because
to
what is
do it anyway.
anxiety? It's fear made obvious. So hold on, I want to take that to manifest for a second. So you have a fear, right? And that fear manifests as what? An anxiety. Now you can feel it. It's not just this thought, or it's a feeling. And then that feeling manifests it in a very clear and obvious way, right? Whether it's your heart rate, whether it's racing thoughts, whether it's something in your stomach, whatever it is, it's made itself clear now. It's undeniable. It is obvious. And what is the only way to deal with that is to confront it. You have to confront it. That's the mirror. When people talk about the mirror is there to confront. And most people run. Most people avoid because they see it clearly, but they run. Because what are you looking at? You're looking at yourself.
Now, a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a one-stop shop for all things spiritual, check out the website, www.childofbalance.com. We opened up a Get 5, Give 5 program, and it's all for referring friends and family. We know you guys do it. We want to say thank you because we are always seeing you send your trusted people our way. So visit the website and figure out how you can not only get $5 for doing it, but give $5 to your bestie. Visit www.childofbalance.com. There's no end date. So if you want a one-stop shop for private spaces, spiritual guidance and assistance, mediumship, mentorship, private readings, shadow work assistance, it's all there. If you are looking for a free tree of knowledge where you can learn esoteric wisdoms, breath work, you can learn about yourself, cultures, spiritual hygiene, spiritual practices, spiritual traditions, and you can just learn about almost anything under the sun spiritual for 100% free, check out the website. And you should become a member. If you're not already a member, www.childofbalance.com. It's 100% free. It'll never cost you money. We would never charge you money. The website is about assistance and community. Take advantage of it, fam. It's a great place to go to unlock your spiritual potential. www.childofbalance.com. Now, I feel like that also answers the question to a certain degree of if you're listening to this and you're going, oh shit, I think I'm doing this, at least in one area. of my life or of my routine or even involving my spirituality or my healing journey or something like that. If you are listening to this and go, "Oh my god, I think I've done that." First of all, don't panic. I feel like at some point we've all avoided something. So, the one thing I want you to avoid doing is labeling yourself, talking bad about yourself, and making it a bigger deal than it needs to be. It's not about punishing yourself for having an awareness that this may be something that you're doing. Because I feel like people get lost in the punishment as an avoidance of still not dealing with it. So it's like, that's great. We don't need you to punish yourself.
Because they're still resonating with that punishment and reward system. I have to achieve so that I can get the reward. I have to work harder. I have to do more so that I am worthy of receiving, right?
Yeah, and it's just
But they chase authenticity, like, because authenticity has been bastardized as perfection. It's been bastardized that you're never going to get triggered. You're never going to get this. You're just going to be this. This is that toxic, like, love and light, and nothing's going to bother me, and blah, blah, blah. Authenticity is being the raw, real you, unfiltered, unmasked, every time.
and it has nothing to do with being unique. I don't know
No,
why people swap like synonymously with the word unique for definitions. Like, and I'm like, what's being authentic? They're like, being different and no, that's not authentic at all. That's not actually what that means. It means not masking. It means if you're feeling upset, guess what? You're going to act upset. It means being open, being self-aware enough to understand your thoughts, your feelings in order to portray it in a good way. And I mean a good way is in 100% honest way. To embrace your beliefs, your values, your practices, to do a lot of that freeing yourself from judgment and that idea that masking or something about you needs to be hidden, you know? And
but that's it. I think it's nuts. Again, it goes back to, like, not so much as that hidden part, but and we've all done this. So, like, hello, me too. We craft masks because we're avoiding how others receive us. We put a mask on, we make an identity, we soften who we are, we do all these different things because we're worried about how we're going to be received. Your authenticity is tied to that. No longer caring how you're received because you're just being you. Being you doesn't require a label. It doesn't require an aesthetic. It doesn't require someone else accepting or validating what you know to be true. I see so many people who chase validation so hard. And my question becomes, once you get that external validation, what did that do for you? Because you knew the moment you knew. You knew the moment you knew. And if your external validation was to prove something to other people, that became your ego, needing that external validation. Because you always knew the moment it happened.
Well, it's like I just want to go back for a second because if you're listening to this and you're wondering like, okay, I have some of these things, but like, what do I do about it? It's as simple as getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that means you got to do the thing that may seem difficult or hard in the moment, and that's usually the thing that you have been attempting to avoid. So if it's crying, then go cry. If it's,
Yep.
talking to somebody, go talk to them. If it's, you have to do the thing that you're avoiding in order to overcome spiritual bypassing. You can't take a bath and overcome spiritual bypassing. You can't go to church and pray about spiritual you have to literally do the thing you're avoiding. The whole
And
idea of
usually,
spiritual bypassing is avoiding something. The only way you stop avoiding something is to place attention on it, to place focus on it, to do it.
that's your
There's no,
vulnerability.
it's an
And that's it.
actionable cure, and
It's
a
your
lot of
vulnerability.
people hate that, is that it requires action and energy, not just energy by itself. I can't I can't intellectualize it, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
then be like, "Oh, I fixed it." No, 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 it doesn't work that way. Because guess what? When it comes to avoidance, you can't just move forward. Because I feel like a lot of times when people are overthinkers or they're intellectualizers, once it has been intellectualized and understood under the weight of the brain, we just go, "Oh, moving forward, I won't do that." Well, that's great, but you can't just move forward with avoidance because you still have luggage of all the avoidance up until the point where you decide I'm not doing this. You then now need to turn around and unpack that luggage, which means you have to place attention on it. You have to look at it. You have to go through it. You have to open it up. You have to sit in it for a second. I'm not saying get lost, and I'm not saying make it your whole identity. No. I'm just saying you can't turn a blind eye to it and pretend it's going to dissolve itself because it's not.
But I think also because like people focus so hard on everything being a mindset. Everything being a mindset. You just have to reprogram your mind. That's not how the mind works. That's not how the mind works. You're not reprogramming your mind because your mind follows where your nervous system leads it every single time. So people continue. That was something else I was going to touch on was that, that's another bypass is that people intellectualize everything. If I can intellectualize it and make it make sense in my logical brain, now hold please. While most people are trying to talk about the spiritual realm, the things that defy logic, the things that defy logic, that you can't really make logic out of because once you start filtering it through the logical side of your brain, you're fighting it. Your humanness is fighting it because it can't just package it and put it into this nice little neat, categories and identities and the boxes and all these things because it defies that. But people get stuck intellectualizing. If I read enough books, if I learn enough facts, if I learn enough knowledge, and then when you ask them to show you how they've applied that to their own experience, very few can't. If you're only intellectualizing, because it's not about getting your head on board, it's about getting your heart on board. So for most people, like if you break that down, think of every time you've gone through an emotional situation that tugged at your heartstrings or whatever, right? You built a wall brick by brick. So you can intellectualize it, but the actual feeling and unpacking of it comes from removing those bricks around your heart space because you're supposed to be living from that heart space, that being. That is the being, not the logic. But people get so stuck in if I can just understand it from a mental processes point, not realizing that your brain, your mind is just taking whatever you feed it. It's just receiving what you're giving.
Oh, and I think it's important to realize that when you spend too much time in any one side of something, you're actively avoiding the opposite. And I feel like that's
Yes.
really important because avoidance doesn't always have to be so overt. It can be covert, it can be by accident. It doesn't always have to be on purpose. You know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes when the opposites idea kind of comes in, it makes sense when you're talking about balancing the scales. Just like you said, like if someone's an overthinker, I've been relying on my upper dantian, my brain, my crown, sometimes my throat, my third eye, right, to do a lot of the heavy lifting, which means I've been avoiding my feelings. I've been avoiding my lower dantian receptors, receivers. Maybe that's your intuition. Maybe that's your gut feeling. Maybe that's, your root chakra. Maybe that's your sacral, your solar. It doesn't matter what you want to dictate those things as, but it also works the same in the opposite. If you're a super feeler, like some people call themselves an empath, like you're an empath to level 4,000, right? And you do everything based off your feelings. And it is the only thing. A lot of times, what are you avoiding? Rational, logical thinking. And sometimes that's a trap within itself. That's a process of avoidance as well. It's like, well, if it doesn't feel good, I won't do it. And sometimes you'll get stuck in your own loop the same way overthinkers will. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. a lot of different ways with the natural opposites, and sometimes it's just an accident, especially when you start talking about the nervous system and comfortability. That's why it's really important. You got to get comfortable not always being comfortable. And you got to be okay to know that's going to ebb and flow. The only way you can stay in actual balance or an area of neutral is to ebb and flow. If you're only in one side, you know, of the square's not balanced. It's the same thing on a linear timeline. If I spend all my times up around 10 and never around -10, then we're not balanced. It's the same kind of an idea. And I feel like for every person that avoids something intentionally, there's probably a dozen things you're accidentally avoiding. And I feel like that's more important because even though you may be able to identify the thing that you are purposely avoiding, it's probably actually the 12 things you're doing by accident for one reason or another that actually probably is more of the majority of the issue or the majority of the problem. And that's why I feel like that self-discovery, responsibility, accountability, that subconscious deep dive of like, what am I doing mindlessly? What have I set, up for myself as like a way of functioning in my vessel, in my body, in my life that I do effortlessly and mindlessly that is actually the problem. And I feel like that's a really huge portion of not only just spirituality in general, is that self-discovery, that self-releasing. Speaking of releasing, because I thought about this when you were talking earlier, if you are holding grudges, please know what you're avoiding is the release,
Yep.
and also the relief that the release brings. So you're also avoiding peace. And I feel like
Yes.
that sounds super simple, but when you think, and everybody knows somebody who holds grudges till the day they die. Everybody has one person in their life that they're like, "Oh yeah, she never forgets a thing. He never forgets anything. They never let anything go." Like, that's a serious moment of a lack of peace. But that a lack of peace also keeps you in some level of not only aggression or anger or a grudge or, resentment, but it also holds you not only in denser energy, but in chaos. And it's just crazy when you think about how all those things are tied to avoidance. Dude, the things that you
Yes.
talked about in the beginning of, maybe spiritual egotism, and then we start talking about, the accidental subconscious stuff, and then you talk about something simple as, you know, I'll never forgive you for something. That's wild. That's wild.
But but you're nailing it because that's the thing. People want to awaken or remember or ascend or whatever, right? You can wrap it up whatever you want. Okay. But the difference is that often starts with chaos. It starts with chaos. And when you lack a self awareness or you lack being rooted in your knowing, right? You're just starting out, your ego can't handle that without assigning blame. That comes in the form of grudges. It comes in the form of refusing to forget or forgive. You're never going to forget. The sooner you can accept that you're not going to forget experiences, that's okay. But people like simultaneously take forgiveness and forgetting. You're not going to forget. So just put that to the side. Put it down. You're not going to forget things. Not that made an impact on you, right? And I don't care what meaning you've assigned the impact. But if it made an impact, you're not going to forget it because you're not supposed to.
And I'm
But
gonna
that
tell you
blame
because I feel like
and
memory is a
grudge,
huge thing for people. So I feel like there's gonna be somebody who's gonna be like, "Well, I don't have a lot of my memories." That's great, but because you're placing all of your focus on the one thing you believe you don't have, guess what you're avoiding looking at? All the memories you do have,
you do.
all the things that
Yep.
you do remember, and all the experiences and the feelings and the emotions from what you have lived and you have active memory. Start there. There's a ripcord for everything. And I literally mean that. You will find that one domino memory that'll bust open a memory like, "Oh shit, I momentarily forgot this." It's so important to understand that sometimes we unintentionally place focus somewhere and it keeps us stuck. I can't tell you how many
Yes.
people have come to me and you, and I know they've come to both of us for the idea of, well, I can't remember things, my either my childhood, my trauma that I think may have happened, or, something as simple as dreams. I can't tell you when people hyper fixate over the fact they can't remember their dreams. It's like, well, why is that a problem? Who told you that's a problem? That you don't remember your dreams?
Mhm.
What about the ones you do remember? Oh, well, they're super important. Okay, well then great. Like, but then what's the problem? Maybe that's how you
Because
function.
somebody, 100%, you nailed it. Because somebody told them that there's something wrong with them if they can't remember every single one of their dreams. Somebody told them that. I mean, I'm just saying, I see BS on social media about that. But somebody told you that. But before somebody told you that that was a problem, was it really a problem? Or is it only a problem now because you resonate with unworthiness? And so in turn, you think something's wrong with you and you're not worthy of remembering your dreams. So you need to do something else in order to be worthy. You
Or
need to get
yeah,
this
or
to
it's
get that.
comparison. I can't tell you how many times the comparison as the thief of joy kind of idea of being like, well, once I learned about spirituality, then I also learned that, oh, if you're really in tune, then you have vivid dreams or you astral project or you, and then it's like, oh, I must not be that good. Just like you said, oh, I'm lacking something. I just might not be that good if I can't do the exact same thing as what I'm being told is the norm for people with really good abilities. That will be the worst thing you will ever hear. I cannot express to you how much you need to not compare yourself to anything. I know a lot of different people who have a lot of different abilities, and even within the same abilities, that fall under the same labels or the same context, people experience them like wildly different. And I have not met two people who receive information the exact same way. So that's the same thing with you guys and your dreams. That's the same thing with, your healing journey, the same thing with your personal growth. Just because, Karen next to you thinks that she did 4 ascensions and 2 eco deaths and she did all these things spiritually doesn't mean that because you didn't do any of that doesn't mean you're not healing. And I feel like that's really important because it's how we relate to the things that we experience that we determine what we label them.
I love that you said ego death because that freaking irks me like ick because it's an integration. It's not, I mean, I get it metaphorically, but so many people don't look at things as the metaphor. And you know that. And I know, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
We have cryptic, teams, messages, this, that. And sometimes I don't think they're metaphorical, but somebody else will think they're metaphorical because they don't understand it, right? That's okay. But the thing is, it's an integration. If you think you're having to fight against pieces of yourself to earn divinity or earn awakening, what do you resonate? Fight, flight, fight. You think you have to fight parts of yourself to earn something else. You're still in fight mode. It just got dressed up in a more appealing way that it gave that fight purpose where it felt like you were getting back up off your knees more times than you were falling down. But it's still the energy of fight. You don't have to fight yourself. You just have to accept yourself. And that's the thing. So many people fail to accept what is because everything just is until you personally assign it meaning. And that's why everybody's connection, channel, filter may look different because the lens that you're filtering through is yours. It's yours. As much as people don't want to hear it, it's bias. It's yours. It's bias. And the second somebody hears bias, now they're like, oh my God, that's bad. No, no, no. It's bias in the sense of you're filtering through your experiences. You're filtering through your knowing. Think about that. If you are actively, and that's what I'm gonna say is if you're actively using your gifts, abilities, this, that, right? The way things come in make sense to you. They might not make sense to somebody else. That doesn't make their way wrong or your way right, but often you're given things, whether it's images, a memory, a this or that, it's unique to you. Thus, your filter is biased to you. It doesn't make anybody else's wrong. Theirs is just different. But there's so much of this, again, like in that spiritual bypassing of it's only this way or it's only this way. And there's such this need to like we just keep going back to, like, everything ties back to what are you avoiding? If I clear enough karma, if I pay enough karmic debt, if I do this, if I do that, then I get this. So you're not worthy till you do all of that? I'm confused.
And I've never understood, just from a morality standpoint and also just a intellectual standpoint, I've never understood the concept, and we're getting off topic, I know. I've never understood the concept of I came here this lifetime to live my entire lifetime, which is supposed to be sacred, right? To make up for either somebody's past transgression or my own past transgression. Like, I don't understand that concept of why am I sacrificing a whole lifetime for some distant relative? I don't get it. And I've seen that in some of these spiritual, like, constructs or structures. And I'm like, but I understand karma, and I understand maybe you're learning, or you're evolving or growing or taking information that you've learned, through life or a past life, maybe, and applying it, in this like, I understand all of that. But I have literally had people tell me, like, oh yeah, well, I was told by somebody that I'm here to, like, it's more than just clear past karma. It's like I'm here to live this tough life because, and they, like, cap it.
It's almost like when people, I know where you're going with that. Well, hopefully, so I don't go sideways. But like when people talk about spiritual contracts, and then they're like, "But I'm being this, and this person did me dirty, and da 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 da." But you say you're here to fulfill your spiritual contract. So these people are just doing exactly what they signed up to do, and you agreed to do. But now they're the problem, and you need to slay the enemy, and they're just abiding by the contract that you're telling everybody that you signed to be here, to do this, to be that. But then, like, but you're mad and you're this and you're that all in the process of it because, like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
And it's one of those things, like, I always ask myself, like, but if you cap it, if you cap it at, like, my life is just supposed to make up for something that happened in the past that you probably don't have physical proof of, because I feel like a lot of these things are, like, spiritual. You either got them from a reader or a mentor or something like that, or maybe you were meditating or you had a dream or something, and you're, like, piecing the puzzle together either directly from somebody else, but so it's being fed to you, or you're trying to make sense of something spiritual from your human brain, and that's what you've uncovered, vibe with or whatever. I just don't understand the cap. Like, I don't get the, "Oh, this is all." So, what you're really telling me when we look at it from an avoidance standpoint is you're avoiding living your life. Why?
Yes.
You're
But that's it.
avoiding living your life in the
How
present
many
moment.
people
Why?
aren't living? Yes. How many people are not actually living? I like legitimately. If your entire now moment, and that's how I mean this, your now moment, so just challenge it for yourself, your now moment is hyper fixated on your past lives or past experiences or what you're waiting to step into achieve, whether it's abundance or this or that or a purpose. What are you doing right now? What are you not doing right now? Are you not living? Are you not being? Are you not breathing? Like, what are you not doing because you have placed your focus on something there it doesn't need to be? Like you just said, I don't believe. No, I'm saying I don't. I'm gonna say I know not to be true. I didn't come here to relive the quote unquote past. That's not it. If you came here to experience, and let's just call it experience, experience, express energy, understand yourself right now in this now moment. Yeah, do all of those things factor in somewhere? Yes. Yes. I believe yes. However, they're not the sole focal point. And what happens when you get this knowledge? That's my best part, my favorite part. So what happens when you get this knowledge? People want to say like, what who they are. And when I say who they are, I mean they're still swapping for an identity.
But I wonder if it's confirmational bias. Because if you feel like it resonates, that means that you have to have some belief that you don't get far in life. That you either don't have a larger destiny or something you need to do, or you feel like your life has always been a struggle and it's been one step forward, three steps back. So that when someone tells you that, oh, well, this life's supposed to be hard and this life's this, is that confirmational bias because you've already told yourself you don't amount to much? Now, a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a one-stop shop for all things spiritual, check out the website, www.childofbalance.com. For those of you who truly appreciate handmade products, we have a handmade shop. Everything is made to order, blessed, saged, and sent out as quick as possible. We have anything from handmade sounds for meditation to herbal blends like bath teas and dump and go specials to road opener mixes to kits and oils and so much more. For those of you who enjoy taking spiritual classes and courses but maybe can't fit it into your busy schedule, we have self-study courses, and everything can be found in the handmade shop. The website is about assistance and community. Take advantage of it, fam. It's a great place to go to unlock your spiritual potential. www.childofbalance.com. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that that's hard to like,
I get it. I get it.
but I just think about that all the time. Like, I don't understand it just from a simple standpoint, like even simpler than that standpoint of being like, so you went the spiritual route to free yourself from, a lot of people call it the quote unquote matrix or the mundane, you know, human experience, whatever, right? You went the spiritual route. But then you found yourself slipping into a construct or a belief system or whatever that tells you that you literally have no future but to suffer to make up for some past generational transgression. What? So you freed yourself to realize you're eternally stuck. You freed yourself, but you're eternally stuck. How and the part that always makes me feel bad is like how does that not send off warning bells in someone's brain? I did all of this work to go, in their mind, go against the beaten track, right? The non-norm of society, to then get told that, oh, just, you might as well just give in to your suffering because that's all you're going to come. Like, that is so disheartening. That's so stunting. That's so limiting. How is that any different from the person in your general population telling you you weren't going to amount to a good career? You weren't going to amount to a good way. Like, what's the difference there? One's just physical and one's spiritual? Like, I don't get it.
Like from my perspective, there isn't one. It goes back to the same old, I won't say song and dance, but it's that people want their suffering to mean something. It's the same thing when people are like, well, I'm just here to be of service and I'm just here to be this. That's your only purpose? You think your purpose is solely rooted in others?
Do you ever wonder?
Solely rooted in others.
Do you ever wonder if sometimes, like, when you pass on or whatever, sometimes I always look at it comically, like, when you meet the big guy or whatever, someone up there, an angel, and they're like, so what happened? I thought we gave you some good signs there. And you're like, what do you mean? They're like, you gave your whole life away. Oh, I did? Like, I always wonder if like these conversations are like, all right, can I go again? Like, I always wonder if you're just like, can I go again? Like, just give me one more time down on earth. I'll figure it out. Like, I always think about that. Always makes me giggle. I always used to do the elevator thing, like, especially when I was younger. Like, people would be like, oh, you're going to hell. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. Like, people, and we were always joking. Like, we would say something and we'd be like, oh, shit, I'm going to hell. But I always used to envision it like an elevator. Like, you die, and like two like men in suits, like angels in suits, were like, gotta stay on the elevator, and like nobody and you're just like, oh boy, is this what's going on? And you're like shooting the shit with the angels, you're like making jokes, and then all of a sudden you're like, as the elevator starts to go down, you're just flabbergasted, like, am I going down? I always used to think of that, and it always used to make me laugh because that would be it. I'd be like, guys, quit playing. Like, as I'm like meeting the edge of the floor, quit playing. Like, you pushed the wrong button. Like,
But like, I giggle because like I love that, and then my asshole self goes, so what if when you go down, it's because you're coming back because you didn't fucking learn?
dude, somebody else, like, now we're way off topic, but somebody else said that. I watched that. It was like a whole interview. Somebody said that he thinks that when you die and you see the tunnel's the birth canal to like you popping out as a baby on the other end. And I'm like, okay, maybe, whatever. And I don't really have one, me personally, like, I really don't have one philosophy, like, one, as far as the life death transition and reincarnate. Like, I've never asked those questions to my guides or my spirit. Like, I'm fine for me personally leaving that a mystery. Like, but it's kind of interesting. If you're like, but fucking what if? What if you're like, oh no, and then all of a sudden it's like, and we're like, you guys can't see me. I did like the parting of the seas, but like swimming out the canal, like, like, that's just wild. But then I also have thought about the whole idea of what if we degress and then start progressing. So what if like ages 1 through like 5, we're actually intellectually degressing out of our past life, of being like all our abilities and all our not like abilities, but like the knowledge that we've gained, right? In the years where we don't have a whole lot of communication skills, like 1 through 3, and then like 3, 4, 5, a lot of people will say that their kids are highly connected between ages 3 and 7. You know what I mean? When they're still kind of super innocent, super open, super whatever. Like, what if that's the last thing to kind of quote unquote go, right? As, we start living another human life. And then what happens? We start progressing until we're like, well, yeah, we start like progressing, and then all of a sudden we start reawakening, reopening, whatever, just in time to do it all over again. I've wondered that because I've always wondered, because sometimes like babies run and small children run so much off of energy that they don't even realize it. Like, when it comes, I mean, just think about your toddler's temper tantrums. What really sets them off? It's either big emotions or they're depleted in energy. Oh, he's just really tired. He skipped his nap. So he's got no energy. He's running on E. He's overstimulated. You know what I mean? Like, and you just think about all those things. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah. So the moral of the podcast, is really just some things to think about. If you guys can identify something you're avoiding, then chances are there's a dozen things you're probably unintentionally avoiding that you just don't realize, that sit on the opposite of things. And they're minute, they're small. But together in a cluster, they add up to be a big portion of things. And that's the really important part, is it doesn't have to be this big egotistical avoidance that you're doing on purpose. Sometimes it can be the really small shit. So I'm going to restate Keys' question. What are you avoiding? All right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Spiritual Roundtable with myself, Child of Balance, and Miss Keys of Wisdom 369. And we hope to see you next week for another seat at the roundtable. For anyone else interested in other social medias, the Free Tree of Knowledge, private services, local events, and much more, check out our website, www.childofbalance.com. Until next time, please remember you are to feel your way through everything. Do not stop, do not make yourself smaller, and always continue to be unapologetically and authentically you, because the world needs more of that.